Hello, welcome to Patiently. This is Christian from Wotmed, and welcome to the first episode of Patiently. So, what is Patiently? The podcast is actually aimed at people who are considering traveling abroad or overseas for medical reasons. In our podcast, to start with, it will initially be focused on IVF, but over time it will open up into other areas, other countries, and broader discussions. Basically, it's going to be trying to bring awareness to problems shared by many, so obviously IVF and infertility, and trying to bring alternatives with real stories and facts, helping you on your journey if that's what you're seeking, and maybe talking to some people that you'd find really interesting to listen to. Now, over time, we'll introduce, as I say, other interesting subjects and talk about things like amazing surgeries so that you become aware of some of the incredible things these surgeons, these unsung heroes, go through. We'll be talking about some amazing devices. I've had a few interesting products come across my desk that I think just definitely worthy of a serious conversation of. And I hope to talk to at some point, members of government and asking why, when entering or leaving countries, medical isn't recognised as a reason for travel, like personal or business. I'd like also with this podcast to help people understand that they don't always have to pay those horrendous bills that they get in places like America or in some cases in Australia, or even be on a horribly long waiting list like the UK has and also Australia has. I'm not overly familiar with waiting lists in the US at the moment. But, we can empathise with governments and companies to a degree that some of these waiting lists that are so long, you can't just keep throwing up hospitals at the drop of a hat. But at the same time, there needs to be something done. But obviously, there's loads of factors involved, and I think these are going to be really interesting discussions to have with different members of different levels of these organisations. The wider vision of this podcast is to work in harmony with our directory that we've built on wotmed.com. And incidentally, if you have got an experience that is positive with a medical venue surgery, specifically if you've traveled overseas for it, please head to wotmed.com now and leave the review. There could be someone looking for exactly your experience today. So it is really very important to do that. But on top of this, while building the review platform, while bulking up the episodes impatiently of talking with heads and leaders of hospitals and governments and patients themselves, we're hoping to build a community of hospitals and leaders who will join us on our mission to eradicate waiting lists all over the world. Now, while I've been trying to build this business for a few years and fumbling and running out of money and doing things wrong and everything above, I've been working with another company, obviously as a bit of a day job, if you'd say, selling their software for them as a business developer. So they help optimize supply chain planning to reduce complexity and ensuring an optimized result. So that means companies don't miss getting food into supermarkets and the business doesn't run out of stock. So it's a very, very difficult thing if you're in that world to understand, well, this software helps solve that problem. And while working with this company and these extremely smart Swedish guys, I've noticed that actually our business, Wotmed, has got a very, very real opportunity to solve some very big problems in the world. If you can imagine, the world has a global patient demand, and that demand has a constraint and a bottleneck of the available beds. In some cases, it might be the money. generally speaking, we're saying that there's a waiting list for people at this hospital, and they can only be seen by as many beds are available or hours there are for a doctor. And my thought was, well, at the same time, there are hospitals in other parts of the world, all over the world, in neighboring countries, that are actively advertising to receive patients because they have capacity. So what I'm hoping to do is talk with heads of these hospitals and clinics and leaders and get them to join us and give us access to be able to match the waiting list with the bed availability in such a way that we don't just keep moving waiting lists to another hospital, but we actually help disperse the demand around the available beds. Now, if we can get a real-time stock of what beds are available in the world, that's really, really interesting. You know, which country has the most and how often, and all of these great questions are really interesting to ask. But can we come together to actually help facilitate patients who are on a 6 or 12-month waiting list? I even heard the other day there are children, I think it was in England, who are on the list for organ donors in the UK, and they just can't find them. Well, why can't we do something similar there with organ donors, where there's an ability to get these body parts to people who are needing them and not let them perish, which they have been. Now, I can't quite put my finger on exactly what it is about the vision or the mission of this business that keeps me compelled. But for years now, you know, we've gone through all sorts of problems, like I say, running out of money and going in the wrong direction and getting distracted and all of this kind of stuff. But I firmly believe in this mission, and I firmly believe it's a worthwhile thing to spend time working on and to get to a result. If we can all understand a little bit better of how this works and what options are available, then hopefully we can solve more problems. Now, in the meantime of all of this, well, you know, what is in it for the head of a hospital to meet and talk with me patiently? Well, my thought is, what if you're considering going to that hospital in that country and you can hear a podcast about the CEO and how he's come into that position, how long he's been through that hospital, hear some of the stories of the patients and the surgeons that have been there, how much more comfortable would you be traveling to that hospital now you've heard from the guy running the show? I mean, I would personally be much more comfortable. So in the coming episodes, we'll be talking to an owner of an IVF clinic. We'll be talking to more people who are in and around the IVF world and answering some more questions for you. If you have questions or suggestions and ideas, contact us through wotmed.com, and we'll talk to you soon. Looking forward to speaking to you.